Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I'm here in Salt Lake City, Utah. But I shot a little video yesterday, I think it was yesterday. No, day before, of the Denver Prime Terminal. And I'd never been there before. And so I shot a little video, and I want to tell you a little bit about it because it's a great resource. So take a look, and I'll be back here in a second. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. Hey, so I mentioned in an earlier video, I'm here at the Denver Terminal, and I wanted to show it to you. It's right here. This is the building. It's about the size of a double wide, but it has a lot of parking, and so we're gonna when I come back, we'll talk about all the amenities that they have inside. It's really quite nice. Thanks. So that building it's deceptively large, because when you go inside, you don't expect to see a full 6,000 square foot weight room like they have at other terminals. They had a really nice basketball court, big group, large screen TV, place. Cafeteria was great. Everybody was really nice. Great, quesadillas. I had a quesadilla. It was all excellent. So it is a great resource. And okay, I lied. None of that's really true. But here's the truth. There are bathrooms and showers. There is free laundry. There is a kitchen area. There is a TV watching area. So they have a lot of amenities. There is a person that works there. I didn't talk to her, so I don't really know what she does. But this place, in Denver, parking is really tough. This place is right near a lot of shippers and receivers that we would go to. So if you haven't ever used it for whatever reason, do it. I mean, we went over there and just got showers. And by the way, it's not as nice as the Salt Lake Terminal, but they provide towels. It's a clean place to take a shower. It's safe because the Flying J and the TA in the Denver there on the I guess that's the east side of Denver, they could be a little bit sketchy, and parking can be just crazy. So, this is a great resource, and I want to thank Lyle from No Hippie Trucking and Transportation. He turned me onto it. So that's why I guess he parks there when he's at home. But yeah, there's plenty of parking. It was easy. It's no frills, but it's definitely unless you really need to pay $10 for a Whopper or $10 for a piece of chicken from Popeyes or something, it's a good place to go to get some rest in Denver, get a shower, like I said, and the laundry was free. So, and they have a couple of vending machines in there. I think the one was out of beverages, but it's a great place to go. So I wanted to talk about some new rulemaking that's going on, and just a little brief, I guess, primer on this. So a lot of the law that we as citizens of the U.S. or even non-citizens have to obey and deal with and prepare for, etc., is not made by Congress. We all learned how a bill becomes law. But there are millions of laws on the books that are enforceable and are enforced that are made by people in federal agencies. And the FMCSA is one of those agencies. And there's a whole genre, for lack of a better term, of law that's called administrative law. And almost every federal agency is empowered by law to make rules. And federal government rules have the force of law. You can be penalized for them. You can even be jailed for violating them. Although usually there's a criminal counterpart to to the civil side rule. But anyway, the FMCSA has the right to make rules and enforce them and cause them to be enforced. And one of the things that they announced, I think this week, was that they basically served notice that they're going to start deciding to govern commercial vehicles. And they're going to get input, but they are going to govern commercial vehicles. This is something that is supported by trucking companies, generally speaking, and it's also supported by safety advocates. And it goes back actually a few years. I think maybe it was 2014 that NHTSA, which is the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, and FMCSA had a committee, and they determined, based on, data, numbers, whatever you want to call it, that a lot of fatal crashes in this country happen in areas that have speed limits of 70 miles per hour or more. And a lot of fatal crashes that occur in places like that involve semis. And I guess what I would say is that whenever we talk about a pileup, it's all invariably there are semis involved. So it's not going to surprise me that that this eventually becomes the law. And organizations like the Owner Operators Independent Driver Association, OIDA, I think that's how you say it, they're going to oppose it, and they're going to say, oh, well, slow traffic, when you slow people down, there are more what they call vehicle encounters. I think that's the term they use. And the idea is that if you govern trucks at a speed lower than the posted speed, that more cars are going to catch up to them and pass them, and that every time there's a vehicle beside another vehicle, that's an encounter, and that creates danger. I've kind of, sorry for the glare, I've kind of talked about that in the past. I just, as a person who's driven for a long time, certainly not semis, but just cars, and a person who's driven a lot of miles in cars and other vehicles before I drove a semi, I'm just not buying it. Yeah, there is always a potential for, a side swipe or moving into the lane when somebody's passing you. But, a lot of accidents happen because trucks can't slow down. I mean, I've seen them happen. And, when a truck interacts with another vehicle, even another truck, it's usually bad news. And, this committee concluded that had speed limits been lower, I take it back, that had trucks been governed, that some of these fatalities wouldn't have happened. So this is it's a life safety issue. And, what I will say is it's obvious to me as a motorist or as a truck driver or just even a casual observer that speed limits are, a lot of people see speed limits as wholly optional. And a lot of people, and this is in cars too, but a lot of people, they just, doing the speed limit is not part of how they live their life. Now, the other alternative, which I would also, I don't have an opinion about, what speed trucks should be governed at. I'm governed at 65. I make good money doing that. And I always have, and I have mostly since I've been in trucking. So I don't have an opinion about what speed it should be. Should it be 60, 70? I don't know. But the other thing that I do think might be better and actually more fair would be speed cameras. And you know, there are very, very few interstate highways or, you know, restricted access roads that have speed cameras on them. Now, some places they have speed cameras in construction zones, but it's very rare that they have speed cameras on interstates. One interstate I can think of is I-380 going through Cedar Rapids, Iowa. There's also a speed camera on I-80 on the Iowa side of the bridge crossing the Mississippi into Illinois. But one place I lived that put speed cameras on freeways was Arizona. And that was in response to people, and this is many years ago now, this is, you know, 17 years ago, 18 years ago. But there were people posting videos on YouTube in supercars where one guy would be driving, the other guy would be videoing, and where they showed speedometers at like 160, 170, and these people were on the freeways. And because they also showed the freeway, they also showed, you know, bridges just whipping by and stuff. So police were able to identify where these people were speeding, and they, you know, would try to like catch them or whatever. But in response to those videos, the local officials put up speed cameras on some of the freeways. But I think maybe that speed cameras are a less costly solution to this problem, because keep in mind that if a company has 100 trucks and none of them are governed and they set a speed, then the company's going to bear the costs of basically making sure all their trucks are compliant. Whereas speed cameras, local state governments would outsource that to companies that derive revenue from putting speed cameras in place. Now that doesn't mean they get to like ticket everybody, because like in Maryland, for example, where there are a lot of speed cameras on non-interstate roads, not highways, but just like local thoroughfares, local governments put them out, they hire contractors. But for instance, in Maryland, you have to, the law says that it has to be at least 10 miles over the speed limit. So it's not like if you go over by a mile an hour, you're going to get a ticket. Even 5 miles an hour, you're not going to get a ticket. The one thing I will say though, is the problem with fixed speed cameras is that people, at least locals, immediately react to them. They're like, oh, gotta slow down. That's not a great scenario, because sometimes traffic slows down quickly, very quickly, because everybody's booking through a 35 zone at 45, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, gotta go 35. That does have the impact of reducing everybody's speed, because everybody behind them has to slow down. But I don't know that it's a great idea. I will say that speed cameras have their utility, and they start to create a deterrent effect, especially speed cameras that move around. And I think, you know, you could put speed cameras in like police cars without a cop in it, and, you know, because, you know, everybody slams on their brakes when they see the police officer, but trust me when I tell you this, if you see the police officer, I mean, you can put your brakes on because you just think you need to, but it's not going to help you. If you're going fast enough that you meet their requirement for getting pulled over, you're getting pulled over. It doesn't matter that you slowed down when you saw them, because, you know, unless you're like super good at it, you're going to get in their radar range before you know, you realize that you are. And so that's how speed cameras work too, although oftentimes you have to be a little bit closer. So anyway, that's a little bit on that, but look for the rulemaking. I'm not concerned about it because I'm already governed, and I guarantee that the rule is not going to say you got to be governed slower than 65. I guarantee that. But I would not be shocked to see it at, say, 70 and you know, or 68 or something like that. So, you know, that's probably coming. because, and by the way, highway deaths are up recently. So it is a concern. And, you know, the fact that this committee met back in, like I said, I think 2014, and nothing really got done until now. But there's been a spike in highway deaths. That's a big deal. Okay, so let's shift gears for a second here. So let's talk about Marvin Keller Trucking. So Marvin Keller Trucking lost in court over a vehicle accident, and they were hit with a judgment of like $10 million, and because of that they filed bankruptcy. They weren't able to reach a settlement with the family of the person that was killed by one of their drivers, and you know, they basically bet the farm in litigation when they probably should have just figured out how to settle the case. But the case, the judgment was for more than their insurance policy, so it was above what is called policy limits. And I don't know if perhaps the plaintiff lawyer, you know, I mean, they valued the case. The person who was killed was married, had a couple of kids, and you know, they took their chances with a trial. And so Keller has, in their bankruptcy filing, has 91 drivers. They did have as many as 115, but they have 91 drivers. And you know, here's the thing that's noteworthy about this, that you know, they're kind of pinning their hopes on this bankruptcy and, you know, saving the company. You know, I'm not really optimistic about that, and the reason is that once a judgment is entered, now they can appeal it and maybe get it knocked down, but there has to be an appealable issue, and you know, appeals are even more costly than the litigation itself. I don't know if it was their insurance company that decided to go to trial or if it was them personally, but it was a bad choice. And you know, if you're going to bet the company, then you gotta realize you might lose. And you know, right now they're putting on a brave face, but I think if anybody's at Marvin Keller and they're a driver, and especially if they got a good record, you know, good safety record, they, you know, they do a good job, just go find another job, because you know, the process will take a little while in the bankruptcy, but it's not going to end well. I predict, and by the way, the plaintiff, you know, once that judgment's entered, they really don't have to negotiate. They never did have to, but you know, it's not the it's just not going to end well. All of the assets of the company are going to be liquidated to pay creditors, but the judgment creditor is the biggest, and they're going to have a lot of, you know, I don't know who any other priority creditors are. I didn't look at the bankruptcy filing, but you know, I just read this on Freight Waves or whatever. But this company is done for. They bet the farm, and they're going to lose the farm. And you know, they're like, oh, we're a family-owned company, like it matters, right? Because Prime is a family-owned company, right? But this just points up that we as individual drivers, you know, we really, I mean, this individual driver who killed this guy back in 2019, he basically is putting his company out of business. I mean, you know, and he's putting people out of work, but that's probably what's going to happen. I could be wrong, but that's probably what's going to happen, unless some bigger person, you know, somebody with deep pockets steps in and says, hey, you know, we'll kick in the amount of money needed to pay the judgment that's over the policy limits. So it sounds like Keller didn't have a lot of insurance. I don't really think 10 million of liability is a huge number for a company with 100 plus trucks to carry. I mean, that just doesn't seem like, it seems like they were underinsured, and that's on them. But you know, on an individual level, drivers can really, really impact what's going on. I mean, I've talked about USX, right? US Express. They're a publicly traded company, right? And in their annual, in their 2021 earnings call, which happened after the first of the year, and it was also their Q4 earnings call, they talked about two significant incidents that they are aware of that they're having to put reserves aside for. So that's a much bigger company than Keller, publicly traded, has access to, you know, bigger sources of capital, and you know, these accidents have so much potential liability that they have to disclose them to the public because they're publicly traded. So, you know, everything we do, you know, can impact ourselves. It can impact, obviously, people that, you know, if we crash into somebody, but it can also impact the jobs of all the people around you in small and large ways. I mean, obviously, if you have a company where there's an accident, your CSA score may go up, and that's going to cause maybe you end up with more inspections or whatever. That's a minor inconvenience compared to having somebody, you know, in your family get killed, but it's also a minor inconvenience to having, you know, dozens and dozens of people laid off. So that is about a truck company going into bankruptcy, but I also think it's a story about safety. But one other thing I wanted to talk about is I was talking to somebody about the truck market today, and I kind of am of the opinion that if we get, you know, we're kind of heading for a recession, but if we get in deeper and we're actually in the throes of recession, I think the truck market is going to loosen back up. I think prime is actually going to start going back to selling, doing, you know, lease purchases. And the reason I think that is because I do think there are companies like Keller that not because of $10 million judgments, but just because of the vagaries of the market and fuel costs and stuff. They're, you know, if things tighten up, they're going to lose shippers that hire them. And the loads that are out there are going to pay less. But if fuel doesn't come down, and it will come down a little bit because you know, if there is a recession, demand will lessen. But if supplies are really tight, even though there's not as much product being used, they could still remain maybe the same. I don't know. But I think there's going to be a lot of people you know, I can't necessarily gauge what that number is going to be, but I think there's going to be some bankruptcy, some people going out of business, people just, you know, maybe even companies that thought they would need more trucks are going to back out of contracts because they're still at a place where they can, because things have been slow. And I think companies like Prime that have really solid contracts and are big players will be able to come in when somebody cancels an order for 30 trucks at Freightliner and come in and say, yeah, we'll take those trucks. And, you know, Freightliner, you know, will be happy to get rid of them because, you know, even though there is a shortage now, at that point, there probably will be a little bit of a glut. I think prices of trucks, used trucks especially, will come down. So anyway, a lot remains to be seen, but you know, today's messages are just about safety and about the wonderful terminal in Denver. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon on Tim Travels. Bye.